All right, hello there, guys. We'll give it just another minute to see if anyone else comes up or shows up before I start the lecture. So the project is due tomorrow, right? Project 01. Just seeing if you guys have any questions or concerns about the project due tomorrow. Anything I can clarify or help with or anything like that before you turn in? All right. Well, I look forward to seeing what everyone comes up with and seeing your stories laid out visually and kind of how you told that story with different shots. So yeah, if you have any last minute questions before tomorrow, just shoot me a quick email and I'm happy to look over anything before you turn it in and give you some feedback. Okay, so that goes for any project down the road that may come up as well. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I'll look for those projects tomorrow. But so yeah, be thinking about too, because that this project will lead directly into the second project. So as we start to talk about color today and practicing some digital illustration techniques in the next 2 weeks, you're basically going to be repurposing some of these drawings from this project and adding color and making them more finished. So kind of be thinking about as you're drawing and as you're finishing off this first project, which frames you really like from this project that you may want to add color to, because that's what we will be doing for the next project. Okay, someone asked last class about Photoshop brushes, about downloading brushes. Has everyone got Photoshop installed okay on their computer now and have their tablet? Pierre has, Ryan has, good. Eleanor, good, cool. Yeah, hopefully everyone's got that set up by now and you've kind of gone through the basic Photoshop videos, just kind of showing you guys the different tools, working with the pressure sensitivity of your tablet and being able to draw basic stuff on there. So this week we're going all the series of tutorial videos on Photoshop that I'll have you guys watch are kind of giving you the basic techniques that we will use for coloring our art digitally. So whether you're starting, you can choose to start it 2 ways. You can start it with a pencil drawing or an ink drawing and then color that. Or if you want to draw digitally in Photoshop, or some people are using Procreate as well, that's fine. So you can start on paper or you can start digitally and then add color to it. But that's kind of what we'll be practicing this week. And I just wanted to show you where some brushes are that I exported from my own brush collection. So these two right here, this is just our canvas page. So basic brushes and comic brushes. These are kind of the two of the brush packs that I use most often in Photoshop. So you feel free to download these and you can install these on your own in Photoshop on your computer. And then when you're watching my videos and stuff, you can see like the actual brushes that I use. So these are the comic ones. They have like ink brushes and pencil brushes for sketching. These are the basic brushes here. They're basically just like texture brushes and good painting brushes too. So I use this like Worn Oil Pastel for painting. And these different texture brushes is for kind of digital illustration, and these hard elliptical brushes for kind of sketching and drawing, as well as just with the basic brushes that come with Photoshop. All right. So did you guys enjoy doing that figure drawing last week or turned in this week? What did you guys think of that? Anyone done figure drawing like that before or not done it? Good, yeah. So it looked to me like some people have had experience before. It looks like it was newer for some people. But so that took you guys, what, about 15, 20 minutes for those 1 minute and 2 minute poses? So if you can take a good, 15 minutes each day and work through one of those videos, that's the best way to get better at drawing, especially to get better at drawing people. So it's, just like 15, 20 minutes a day doing that is really going to help you for this class, but really in general, improving as an artist and making yourself a better artist. That is going to really help you. So the more you can do just drawing from life and observing drawing, the more quickly you'll improve, and the easier this class will be because you'll just get used to drawing more quickly. So just a note on some things I saw kind of repeated on multiple people's drawings. Just try and draw in that center line. I mentioned that on a bunch of people's drawings, so I just wanted to explain what I meant by that. So here is the face. So the face is facing this way. So I draw the center line of the face that way. And then we got a twist in the body, and then the center line of the body comes that way. So just drawing in that center line will really help with that squash and stretch and a sense of movement in your figures and a sense of energy. So no matter what pose it is, I really like to draw that center line in there. Okay, and I see tons of other artists doing this. If you're drawing someone from the back, it's really easy because you just, if it's a nude model, you see that spine right there. So that will really help draw or help to get that pose down. If it's from the front, it's a little harder to see if you're ever drawing a clothed figure, someone in a costume or just clothes or whatever. Sometimes the clothes have, a center line seam of buttons or whatever down a shirt. So that helps you to see the center line as well. My really weird drawing person in the shirt. Okay, so just getting that center line in there will really help. And also, I saw some people, I also mentioned just to add cast shadows. This can be something too when it can actually help with storytelling too. So it helps give the figures a sense of weight and lets them feel grounded on the floor or whatever surface they're standing on. Just drawing that cast shadow between their feet and touching the feet, because if the feet are on the ground, then you want that cast shadow to be touching those 2 feet. If someone's sitting, then where their body touches the ground there, then that is where the cast shadow will come from, okay? So that gives it a sense of weight and just information about the figure. They're sitting on the ground here. Their feet are on the ground here. And then when you get into action poses and things moving, having someone running, having that cast shadow not touching the feet will really help. The same thing can go when you're drawing, when you're not drawing people, but if you're drawing, cars or anything else that's moving. Cars can have cast shadows too. So it really adds a lot to your drawings just to throw in that cash out. Something that's very simple to draw, but really adds a lot. Okay, any questions on those figure drawings? We may have that for an assignment or a drawing challenge later in the quarter. I may have you guys do one with clothes figures so you can practice drawing costumes and drawing folds in clothing as well, which is a whole nother challenge, but also very important. But yeah, if you can, those videos I sent you, that YouTube channel of I think it's called Draw This. They upload new videos about once a week or so. So I would just follow them on YouTube, and when they upload a new video, just spend, 10, 15 minutes drawing, going through some of those poses. It's a really good way to improve. All right, so we are going to start talking about color today. Okay, color. So this is digital illustration. So our drawings in this class are basically going to be built around telling a story with our drawings, okay? And so that's kind of what we focus on for this first project. How do you draw and create different shots to tell an effective story? So now we're going to add color to that. Color is a huge emotional indicator for your drawings and for your stories. It's really going to connect with the viewer a lot when they see color in your drawing, and let them know, okay, this scene is supposed to be happy or exciting or scary or calm or relaxing, whatever that you want the emotion and of that story to be. Color is going to be the #1 way to show that emotion. Okay. So you have to be very careful and very purposeful when you're using color, and you kind of have to understand the effect that color has on the viewer, so then you can utilize color in a purposeful way to help tell your story and help create emotion in your illustrations and your drawings. So basically the main way to do that is kind of have a plan with your color. You don't want to just sit down at a blank colorless drawing and just start filling in green here, blue here, orange there, whatever it may be. You want to have a plan of attack with color. So that's coming up with different color combinations or use of a monochromatic color to help color in and illustrate your story or your drawings. So people really react to color, and you can do like an okay drawing, but if you have these amazing colors on it, people will think it's amazing. If color really catches people's eye and makes things stand out, so it's important to be able to do that with your color as well as you're working in different ways. And then the best way to think about it, and kind of what our next project will be on, is you should have a color plan for different moments in your story. Okay, so calm and quiet moments in your story should have a certain type of color. Action and exciting moments should have a type of color to it. And there's some general rules to follow for that, but you can, obviously change it and manipulate it for your own story. Sometimes certain locations in a story have different colors. Sometimes different characters have different colors associated with them. So it's different moments, different places, different characters in your story should have different colors associated with it. So that's really what this next project is going to be about. You choosing some different moments from your story, some different types of shots from your story, and how is that, what sort of colors are you going to apply to those moments? All right. Has anyone made a color wheel before on their own, back in elementary school, in different art classes? Has anyone made a color wheel? Valentina has. Anyone else? Oh, Art 110. Cool. Okay. Good. Yeah, so basically any basic class you take that involves color, you'll start with a color wheel. So I suggest kind of going through what I'm going to do today, but doing it digitally. You know, if we were taking a watercolor class or an oil painting class, we would recreate this color wheel with oil paints or with watercolors. So since we're doing it digitally, we will do it, our version digitally. Okay. So let's see here. Actually, let me. Okay, let's see if you guys know some of these types of colors. So I'm going to start with 3 colors. Okay, what are these 3 colors? You guys probably remember these from back in the day, where we learned about these colors back in elementary school. Yes, primary colors, exactly. And these are the 3 most simple, most pure colors. You can't mix these colors. You know, if you're working with paint, you have to buy red paint, yellow paint, and blue paint. You can't mix them from other ways, from other colors or anything like that. So you just have to start out with these basic primary colors. So yeah, primary is that yellow, red, and blue. Primary colors, okay? So pretty simple. So now, what are these next ones I am going to fill in? Can you guys tell here? Okay, what are these next 3 colors? The orange, green, and purple. Yes, Eleanor, thank you. The secondary colors, exactly. So these are the colors that you can create by mixing the primary colors together. So yellow mixed with blue equals green, yellow and red makes orange, and so on. So has anyone ever done watercolor painting or oil painting in a class or on their own before? Emily, Valentina, cool. So if you have, and you had like going and painting with, I prefer watercolors just because they're easier to clean up and I can take them with me and go paint different places, is a really good way to practice your color and understand your color a lot. So being able to mix colors together to get different versions of these colors is going to really help you to do that. So if you have a chance to do some traditional painting as well, that's really going to reinforce your understanding of color a lot. But going out there and painting and trying to mix different colors and to create something that you're looking at in real life is a really good way to do it. So just taking I like to paint with watercolor paints outside. So going to the beach or to a place with a nice view and just taking my colors and looking at, okay, the sky's a blue, but it's kind of has a little bit of green in it. So I want kind of a greenish blue for that sky, and trying to mix that color and then paint it down is a really good way to practice your color. So we'll kind of be doing the digital version of that for our drawing challenge this week, where I'm going to have you guys draw from a still life that you guys create, but do it digitally. All right, so those are the basic colors. So it's good to, we're gonna talk more about different color combinations here in a sec. But those primary ones and secondary colors are kind of just the basic starting point for understanding color. Okay. Let's put these together. Okay. Another good way to think about color is with hue, saturation, and value. Also called brightness or lightness. So hue, so this is a really good way to talk about color and kind of think about color, to be able to identify different colors as well. It'll be helpful for us talking about your work when we do critiques on your colors. And it also will be helpful for you when you're kind of trying to decide what and when and where to put those colors. So let's just start with an example. Let's just do a nice blue. So the hue here, hue is just what color it is. So this is blue. So I would call this blue. Okay. So the hue is blue. So hue is just what color it is. Blue, red, green, orange. You can say the hue is in red orange, meaning it's more of a kind of a reddish orange. But it's just a way to label that color. So then saturation. This is really, really important. Saturation is basically how pure is that color. So I can take this blue right here, and looking over here is my color picker. It should be hue, saturation, brightness sliders. Just a sec. This is what I wanted. So when we're talking about that hue, saturation, value, or brightness, Photoshop uses those sliders to help you pick those colors. So I like to use it and Photoshop uses it. So I'm going to pick this hue as the blue right here that I just put down. And now the saturation is just the purity of that color. Okay, so if you're dealing with paints, it's mixing black or white into that to make it more or less saturated. So here I can adjust the saturation. Making it less saturated just makes it kind of more gray, basically. It adds a little bit of gray to that. So this right here is the same hue as this blue, is just a desaturated blue, okay? So it's the same hue, but a different saturation. Okay, so we can also make this super saturated and make it more saturated right there. So let me put this one here at about a middle saturation. So now we have this one, this blue here. There it is, less saturated. There it is, more saturated, okay? And once you have that saturation figured out, then you can also affect the brightness or the value. So value, as you guys remember from Art 109, is just shades of gray. How light or dark something is. So hopefully you guys have made a value scale. If you guys were in my Art 109, we talked about value scales. So then you can make this a really dark, maybe that's too dark to see, a dark desaturated blue, where this color here basically looks gray. But when I select this color, I can look over here. It's like, okay, it's a blue. It's about a middle saturation, but it's pretty dark. You can also make it lighter and less saturated. So they basically look like grays, but they are almost just pure gray, but with just a little bit of blue in there. Okay, and you can do the same thing with any one of these colors. Let's do it with a red. So red is a very, very powerful color. So we'll start with a red there, and then let's change the saturation. So we got our saturation slider. So I want to make it less saturated. There we go. So now it's kind of a pink there, but maybe we can make it a darker and adjust the value. So that almost looks like a red brown kind of. So now you can, pick a random color from here, and you can use hue, saturation, and brightness to talk about that color. Let's do one over here. Okay, so you can say this is a yellow green. It's pretty desaturated and pretty light. Okay, so then I can do this. Oh, that's too dark to really see. So now we can say this is a desaturated green that's pretty dark. Okay, so this is going to be a good way for us to talk about your work. I may say, oh, that background, that red wall there should be desaturated a little bit so it's not so bright. Okay. So I encourage you when you're working in Photoshop to find these hue, saturation, brightness sliders. So this is the color window color right here, window color. And then if you hit these three little, or these little lines in the corner, it's just different ways to display that color. So I use these sliders or this cube. So this cube can do the same thing. I just choose my hue over here. The saturation is basically from here to here, going side to side, and the brightness is up and down. So if you prefer to have the actual sliders, they got the hue, saturation, brightness sliders in here as well. It's basically the same thing, but sometimes it's helpful to see those sliders, whichever setup you prefer, but that's just the best way to kind of think about and use color when you are working in your drawings. All right, any questions on hue, saturation, or brightness or value? Okay. So the biggest thing I want you guys to know when we're talking about hue, saturation, brightness is limit saturation. So do not use lots of overly saturated colors in one drawing. Okay. You want to limit where your saturated colors are. In real life, everyone take a second and look around the room you're in, wherever you are right now, and see where the most saturated color is. Okay. So I'm looking around where I am. This is probably the most saturated color, a little highlighter sitting around. But usually you're not going to see big areas of saturation. Saturated color is overwhelming to the viewer. Anytime you may have worn like a bright shirt to work or to school that day, you're usually going to get comments on that bright saturated color shirt. Or if you're driving down a block of houses and maybe you see that one house that's painted like a bright yellow or bright green, it gets a reaction. Too much saturation is overwhelming to the viewer. So just limit your saturation and usually just use less saturated colors, okay? Sometimes you will have a drawing that's all saturated, but especially for like a sequence of images, start with desaturated colors and then just pick and choose your spots to add where you want to add a lot of saturation. Okay, so don't overuse saturated colors. That's the biggest and quickest way to kind of make your drawing look kind of garish to the viewer, something that doesn't appeal to people looking at it. To just like a really quick example here. If I was to do like a drawing of a forest and I want all these different color trees in here. Right now, this right here is just too saturated, okay? That's not really what a forest looks like in reality or what it would look, or if someone's looking at this. So I would just want to desaturate this a bit. That's gonna look a little bit more natural. Just turn down that saturation. But if I wanted to have like, let's say Red Riding Hood in this scene, I could have a little small area of bright red. So now I have a small area of bright red standing out in this scene. Okay, so there's a little area of red in a more desaturated scene. But if and all those trees and those greens were bright green, it's just too overwhelming to the viewer and going to be hard to look at. So now this one saturated shape right there stands out among more desaturated shapes as well. So think about that as you're doing it. Each individual drawing, you kind of want to be conscious of where are the bright areas of saturation. And they should probably be little shapes within your overall composition and your overall drawing. But we'll keep talking about that as we go on throughout the quarter about when and where and how to use saturation in your work, saturated colors. Okay. Let's go back here to our color wheel. Okay, so there are also good types of color combinations that you can use when working with your illustrations. So basically the main advice I have for how to choose and pick colors for a given illustration or a given drawing is you don't want to use the entire color wheel, okay? Using the entire color wheel, it kind of just makes your work look amateurish, and it kind of makes it look like it's just a kid coloring in a coloring book where they're just choosing green for this, or yellow for the sun, blue for the sky, purple for the person, whatever it may be. But you don't want to use all of these colors for every illustration. You want to pick and choose just certain sections of the color wheel to use to make your drawings more sophisticated and more interesting. And some really good ways there are some classic types of color combinations that go well together that will go over here to help you come up with different ideas for your drawings. So you can do an entire drawing just using primary colors. You can do an entire drawing just using secondary colors as well, okay? So that can be a really good way to limit those colors, okay? So you can choose to just use these three colors for a drawing, okay? So when I make these colors bigger, let's kind of zoom in on these three here. What does anyone have an idea of kind of the feeling that these colors give you here? What type of work might these colors be used for? Flag. Oh yeah, it does kind of look like a flag. Exactly. Yeah, flags want bright saturated colors so they stand out a lot, for sure. Yeah, what flag is that? I guess that is a flag I'm looking at right now. But oftentimes when you're using these colors and they're very saturated, it will have a childlike feel, okay? Because these are the primary colors, they're the first colors kids learn. And when they're this saturated and it's just those three colors, that is the reaction that a drawing will have. Think of this character. What character is this? Yeah, so those characters are associated with Superman because he's supposed to be super friendly. He's supposed to be, and then the comics are aimed for kids lots of times, or that's what they were originally created for. So that is the color palette associated with Superman. So that's kind of how I think about, especially when they're all saturated. So all these three colors right now are very saturated. But you can choose to do that if you want to create kind of a kid's book feel or a simplified feel or a friendly feel for your drawings. So secondary colors have a little bit more of a sophisticated look to them, just because they're not the basic colors that come out of the paint tube and you have to mix them together. So you can choose to use just those secondary colors for a drawing as well. So let's go over another color combination. Let's do monochromatic. Mono. Anyone ever heard of monochromatic color scheme before? This is a very easy type of color scheme to use because it's just using one color. So mono means one, so monochromatic, so you're just using one color. So this is a very easy way to kind of create a drawing, but it's also an easy way to get a good a color combination that has a lot of harmony to it. Because, you know, if you're working just with, let's do purples, purple here, you can combine it with all these different, so the hue is going to stay the same, but then the brightness and the saturation can change. And you know, all these colors will go well together because they're all the same hue. So you don't have to worry about saying, oh, do these colors go well together? Well, they're gonna go well together because they're all the same hue. You're just changing that brightness and that saturation. So you could create an entire drawing using just these colors here. And when I'm starting an illustration or a drawing, I will oftentimes choose what one of these color combinations I want and just put a bunch of these, scribble a bunch of these colors on the side of my drawing and just choose from this color palette here to fill in different colors. So if you want to do that as you're working, that is a good way to do it. But you can do this with any hue and then just change that brightness and the saturation. You can get a whole bunch of different options to use for your colors, okay? But that's a really good way, and that's kind of one of the main ways I start a drawing is I kind of choose what do I want the main color to be. And I kind of just start with a monochromatic drawing. You can always start with that and add just a little bit. So I could make something just a little bit bluer, and that would work well too with it. It's not going to be too jarring to the viewer, but using just that one hue, changing the brightness and the saturation is a good way to go about it. Okay, complementary colors. This is another one that is used a lot. Complementary colors. So complementary colors is a way to combine colors together to create a pleasing combination. So that is just using colors opposite of one another. So we go back to our color wheel and we just look at what colors are opposite each other. And if you're kind of aware of these color combinations, you'll start to see them all over the place, okay? So blue and orange go very nicely together. Green and red, and yellow and purple. Okay. So have you guys seen these color combinations anywhere before in maybe logos, in different things? Have you guys seen any of these colors together? How about this one? You guys seen this together? Yep, University of Washington, exactly, UW. So there's that color combination. This one you guys might recognize. Christmas using this together. Yep, they use those colors. I can't think of a specific one for orange and blue. You guys have one? I think like there's definitely sports teams that use orange and blue together. You actually see orange and blue a lot in movies and movie posters. People or directors and color correctors in movies will oftentimes use that orange and blue. Let me see if I can find some examples here really quick. Yeah, so this one is used a lot in like movie posters. So here's a bunch of orange and blue movie posters right here. So once you're kind of aware of these combinations, you'll start to see them all over the place because, you know, those colors work so well together. There's a reason people go back to that color combination time and time again to use for different things, logos, posters, illustrations, interior design. It's used a lot for fashion design. You'll see a lot of it. So yeah, I use complementary a lot. Probably complementary and monochromatic I use the most when I'm sitting down to color and illustration. So complementary, they go nice together. Oops. These colors go well together, but they also make each other stand out, okay? So let's say you had, let's do it for like let's do it. So you'll see it lots of times. So if you have a lot of blue colors here for like a, let's say this is a poster or a book cover. You got a lot of blue stuff going on in here. Maybe it's a scene at sea, whatever it may be. If I want the title of this to really stand out, making that title orange will really stand out against that blue background. So if you want your focal point to stand out, or you want, or you just want the colors to look nice together, you can use those complementary colors in a way to make both the colors more interesting. Okay, and then the other one I use is analogous. Analogous colors, and that's just choosing colors that are close together on the color wheel. So really what I can do to break this down a little bit more is put kind of in between colors here. So in between a green blue. You can have a purplish blue, a reddish purple, orange red. There we go. And a yellow orange. So choosing an analogous color scheme is just choosing colors that are close together. So I can choose like these sections of blues and purples and use those all together. It's similar to monochromatic, but you just know all those colors will go nicely together because they're all close together on that color wheel. So again, before you sit down to start a drawing or start an illustration that you know you're going to color in, you want to have that plan kind of in the back of your mind. So you want to know going into it, what sort of color combination should I use or am I going to use for a given illustration or a given drawing? Let me see. Okay. Yeah, so that is going to be the best way for you to help to choose colors. So there are more of these. There's like split complementary and like I forget the names of the other ones, but there's more complicated color combinations that we may get to later in the quarter, but for the most part, kind of these are the general ones that are used most often. These are the ones that kind of simplify and make your job easier as a colorist when you're choosing colors for something. And will hopefully help you to choose colors that go nicely together and stand out well together. Any questions on those different types of colors? Color combinations? Okay, so we're just going to do color in this. I'm going to color in this little drawing with you guys so I can kind of go over the thought process of when choosing colors for this very, very simple drawing we got here. Okay, so what kind of color combination should we use for this drawing? What do you guys think? Should we do a complementary color scheme, analogous, monochromatic? Any ideas here or preference? Anything you guys would like to see? Light gray. Well, we want to use some color, so yellow. Okay, so what do you mean by yellow, Ryan? Like monochromatic with just yellow? Okay, so let's try that. So just to note, the videos I get into that I'll have you guys watch this week kind of show you this process in a little bit more detail. Okay, we can try analogous with yellows, Kevin and Ryan. I'll combine your guys' ideas. So you usually will have one layer here. So this layer on top is my ink or drawing layer. So I'll put drawing on here. And then you usually want to color underneath. So you put a layer under this top, your drawing layer, and I will call that one color. Pretty simple there. Okay, so I have my drawing layer and my color layer, and we want to do kind of a analogous color scheme using yellows. So I'll start with the yellow here. And what I do oftentimes, I mentioned to you guys, I will just put down a few different hues or different color options right next to each other. Oh, I almost forgot something. So there's two more color combinations that I forgot to go over. Let me do that really quick. Which are pretty important. Pretty important, but also simple. You guys have probably heard of it. Warm colors and cool colors. So these are good other options to use. So what are the warm colors? It's very similar to analogous, but just kind of another way to think about those color combinations. Yeah, red, orange, yellow are your warms, and your cools are blues, purples, and greenishes. Okay, so kind of closer to the blues, and then just going off of that a little bit. And warms are closer to that orange, and just going off of it a little bit that way. So it ends up being very similar to analogous, as you can see, but it can just be another way to think about those colors as you're trying to come up with a color scheme that you're working with. So going back to this quick sketch, these analogous colors are all warm colors. So we got analogous / warm is kind of how I would describe these color combinations. And when starting a drawing, which the videos will go over in more detail, what I start with, I just put a color down there. Just, you want to get rid of all the white, should be your main goal when you're starting an illustration. What you don't want to do is come and be like, okay, this part's yellow, this part's orange, color in this section. This cloud here is red or orange. Maybe I'll do a bright red for this building, because it's not going to look as natural. So you just want to get rid of the white. So getting rid of that pure white will really help. And right now, when I'm looking at this color, I want to make it a little less saturated. So I'm going to desaturate it a little, maybe even a little more. Because like I said, you want to limit saturation. Okay, and then I just want to kind of color different sections. So I want to go towards that more orange and be a little darker and desaturated as well. And I'm just going to color in all this section here. A little bit of white here on my drawing layer. Okay, so now I can go, and we'll talk about this when we talk about perspective, but if you guys have done any perspective drawing, darker objects will appear closer. So since this building here is closer to us, I want this to be a little bit darker. And I can also go more towards that warm red, but I want it to feel, I don't want like a bright red building, but we can have a reddish brown here in the foreground, maybe a little darker. But I can pretty much just start choosing colors within this analogous color scheme and these warm colors to start picking colors that I'm working with. Okay, this is going to be a little plume of kind of smoke coming out. So I want to lighten this and desaturate it. That's a little much. There we go. So as you guys are looking at this, what kind of feeling do these warm colors give you? Yeah, it kind of feels like a sunset. Exactly. All right, another piece of advice is don't color for reality, where you're really worried about like, okay, what color is a building? I need to make this like a grayish blue for the building. Color more for emotion and for your color combination, okay? It will just be a lot more interesting. We'll get into like the specific visceral reactions that people have to different colors when we talk about color later on. But there is a reaction people have to certain colors as they're working to, or as they're looking at art that you want to be able to manipulate. I'm going to come here and make this setting sun a lighter value, but it's that same yellow. So I just made it more desaturated and a little bit lighter. For these clouds, I'm going to go a little bit darker and a little bit more desaturated. I'm going to make it slightly more orange. Yeah, give it kind of that hazy brown look. But this color is working right now because it's within that analogous color scheme. It's the same hues from up here. I'm just changing the brightness and the saturation bit. Okay, so now this scene right now is not too saturated. So if you look here, this orange is pretty saturated, but not too bad. This one is more desaturated. If I want to put some little hits of windows on here, little shapes of saturation can stand out nicely. Okay. Okay, so let's say I want this character here, this dude in the cape, kind of a superhero type person. I really want that person or that character to stand out as a focal point. What color should I make it? I could be from this color scheme, or it can be a different color altogether. What do you guys think I should use to make that color or that person focal point stand out? Black, purple. Yeah. Yeah, Ryan, black would definitely work. Black is always super powerful. And when we're talking just about pure values, black is always a good way to go. right? So we could definitely do black, and that stands out too. I like Kevin's idea of purple because then that is complementary, or blue. A purplish blue would work because that's a complementary color of orange and yellowish. So let's try that purple and blue. And should it be desaturated or very saturated? Bright or desaturated? I want to make this really saturated here. We're just going to use a purplish bluish. See how we can get that to work. There we go. And I will also put a little black in here, like some shadows on the person. So now we got that person standing out there. We got some dark values, so some black on there. And we also have some complementary colors, which will stand out against the oranges and yellows. It's also a cool color. Cool color stands out against warm colors. Since we have all those warm colors, a cool color will stand out. I could also come in here and make it a really saturated, kind of a bright reddish color. I could also do that instead. Actually, let me just set up this guy. Could also make it a really bright saturated red and have that be the most saturated color on there. So there's a couple options you can do to make that stand out, but just thinking about contrasting it. So contrasting it with making it a cool color against warm colors, or making it a really saturated color against a bunch of desaturated colors is a good way to make it stand out. So you notice I started with this analogous color scheme, right? But I didn't follow it exactly to a T. I added in a cool color against all those warm colors. And then I changed, you know, obviously the brightness and saturation throughout to get different colors in there. But overall, I would say in this very simple drawing that the color scheme, the color choices are working well together. And the reason it worked out together is because we started with those analogous warm colors to really make it stand out, or to have a clear plan as we were working on this drawing. All right, so this was kind of our general intro to color. We'll have a couple other days where we talk about color as well throughout the quarter. I'll have you guys practice some digital still lifes this week, so you can practice just getting used to selecting colors and working on that in Photoshop. But that will pretty much be it for today. Before we go, is there any general questions on what we talked about today, color theory stuff, or about Project 01 due tomorrow? All right, so that will be it for today. Yeah, I'll leave this open for a second as people log off if anyone has any individual questions. But other than that, I will look for your projects to be turned in tomorrow. I'll try and have those graded by the end of the week. And then look out for an email from me with info on the drawing challenge and what videos to watch to kind of start learning this coloring process in Photoshop this week.